This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech plays in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode, tell him one more time, 207, I think it is, of Breaking Bank Europe in this series, ConQuest, where we interview the best scam baiters, the most entertaining and also successful ones.
Thank you for calling.
Why you have done such a thing?
Why you are jogging through the number, right? Or running? You're like, what now? I don't know.
We have with us today Dayo, that is from Canada. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Roberto. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's our pleasure, our honor to have you with us. I would like to understand what there is behind the scene of all we see in YouTube, everything that you do. So where are you getting inspired to do this thing? Why? Something happened to you that you wanted to give back or take a revenge? What happened?
Yeah, so I think if you roll back, I think it was back in like 2016, someone that I knew was actually being catfished online, and they had no idea. And I remember that we exchanged a few messages, and then another friend of mine sent me a picture of, I guess, their that friend's Facebook, saying that they were engaged all of a sudden. And so I was like, what? Like, it just came out of nowhere. So I messaged her and I said, "You're engaged?" And she said, "Yes, I met the man of my dreams." And there was this whole thing that she was kind of saying, but she gave no indication that she was even in a relationship at all. And so that mutual friend said, "I'm pretty sure she's being catfished." And I said, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. And so we started doing some investigating, and we ended up finding the person who the scammer was impersonating, the real name. And we showed it to her, and she denied everything. She said, "No, there's no way. That's someone else that's faking." And it was just really heartbreaking to see how much, I guess, the scammer had really gotten into her heart. And then eventually we showed her other evidence, I guess you could say, that it was in fact a scam. And she just broke down crying and just was really, really heartbroken. And so that was kind of like my introduction to the fact that people did scams. Recently, I was looking through some of my old emails, and a lot of junk emails from like 2009, 2010 that I found where there was like, an inheritance of millions and millions of dollars. And I was like, oh, I never even saw these, because they went straight into my spam. But then as time went on, I actually had an app on my phone where you could listen to a bunch of different radio stations throughout Canada. And I came across a radio station that said that the Canada Revenue Agency scammers had called them, and they gave out the phone number on the radio and said, "Give them a call and then let us know how it goes." And so I gave it a call, and I just wanted to do like a really quick prank call. And the scammer started swearing at me like crazy. So I called the radio station back and said, "Hey, the scammer like really lost it on me because I was doing some accents." And they said, "Wait, you do accents?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, can you do a call for us tomorrow?" So they called me back the next day. And my very first scam bait call, I actually just released a video on my YouTube channel about doing being on the radio. And that was my first full like scam bait call where I actually wasted a significant more amount of time than like 10, 12 seconds that I had previously. So, and then that was kind of like the catalyst where I was like, oh, I could actually prank call scammers like all the time.
Right.
Cool. Like my friends knew that I could do prank calls. And so I just said, well, why don't I put that talent towards calling scammers and wasting their time and trying to protect people? Like I remember my friend I remembered what happened to her. So that was kind of like the motivation for me.
That's very good. And at the same time, you entertain people because some characters are very very interesting and very funny. How you get
Right.
inspired to do these characters? I mean, I saw you pretended to be a famous soccer player, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I pretend to be Messi. Yeah. Yeah. Like sometimes I just think of I always, obviously, because I can do accents. That to me, the accents are not what's funny. What's funny to me is the character
Right.
behind that accent. And so I just try to create, uh, you know, s- situations or sayings that would help people remember that call. And so that way it reminds them. I just want to educate people through that way. And I find like through humor is usually a pretty good way for people to remember some stuff. So I try to do that.
Absolutely. And is particularly memorable moment something that really surprised you, like the scammer really fell for it or went along trying to get money, but anyway, drag it in a way that was funny. What is the most peculiar situation you've been living?
So that's a great question. I don't know that I can pinpoint one specific one, but there is one that comes to mind almost immediately every time someone asks me that, and that would be one that I did. This is before I started making videos where I was on camera, I believe, and it was one where I made a call with another scam baiter based out of the UK. His name is Adam IREX Scammers, and he basically had me. We were doing like a joint call together, and the scammer told me that my IP address had been hacked, and so I pretended to not understand what IP address meant. I told him that I pee here, so why is someone in my home? But how can they hack me? I only pee here. I pee here in my home, and the scammer like didn't get the play on words that I was doing, which is usually what I try to do is play on words that they say or something along
Right.
those situations. And anyway, so to me it was just funny at the time that he didn't catch on to IP, and so but the audience was having a hoot, which was always fun. So
Right. What kind of scam are the one that you are more into trying to stop, or that are the one that upset you the most?
okay, well, I would say that they're different as far as the ones that upset me the most. Definitely the ones where people are um, like extortion scams are really scary, and they're really those are the ones that upset me the most. But those are really hard to come by unless someone is providing you that phone number for that particular scammer. So for example, I had a cartel scam where what they would do is they would actually send you basically pictures of body parts, and they would tell you that if you didn't pay up, that this was going to happen to you and your family. And
Mhm.
they have, because in the United States it's really easy to find information about people. These scammers would have information about your family members. They would say, if you don't pay the $3,000, we're gonna end up taking care of this person in your family, and they would name the person in the person's family. And so they sent me another scam baiter sent me the phone number to this cartel scam,
Mhm.
and that scam to me was one of like the more scary ones. The sextortion types of scams too. Those are always really scary. But I don't find myself really calling those very often because again, coming by those phone numbers is typically pretty hard. I do call mostly, I would say, like tech support scams or refund scams. Those are really really big and fairly common. Like the fake Norton scams, fake Amazon, fake PayPal, fake Microsoft. Those kinds of scams are fairly common. So I enjoy calling them because I can waste some of their time. But the ones that get me upset are really the extortion ones.
Yeah, I see. I never heard something so so bad, so visual, like body parts,
Yeah.
and there must be, considering that most of the time the victim of those scams are people that is a little bit fragile and not really consistent to understand that something is can be potentially fake, is not to be worried about. with the technology that is coming up. Now we're in a moment where whatever we see and we hear, unless we are touching with our own hands or hearing with our own ears, we cannot believe it anymore. And the culture gap between what people understand now and what people have no minimum idea it could exist. So people of a certain age or not too much tech savvy. Are scammer adopting this new technology? You think in the next future is going to get worse and worse?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, just in the last, I don't know, I've been doing this for almost 6 years. I've seen the evolution, the I get, in a way, like, it sounds really bad to say, but the growth of the scamming industry. I've seen how sophisticated it can get, and I think with technology like AI, yeah, it can get pretty scary. I've seen people sharing their stories of how someone cloned their family member's voice and said, I'm being held hostage. Can you please, send the money and blah, blah, blah. And some people do, because at the time, if they catch you in that heightened state, you're scared. You don't use your critical thinking skills as well. And so a lot of people just fall for scams because of that kind of thing. But if we kind of just step back, calm ourselves down, hang the call up, call our actual person who told us that they were, you'd realize that, oh no, they're actually not kidnapped, or they're not, in any kind of danger. The grandparent scam has the same kind of thing to it, where they call and pretend to be your grandson or your grandchild, or your son or your daughter, or like that kind of thing. They can copy your voice, and yeah, that's the technology is it's going to get more and more and more sophisticated and scarier.
So the first lesson is don't fall for the rush of doing things immediately.
Yeah.
Stop, take a deep breath, and evaluate things. Try to contact the people. And this is important to say, mostly because grandpa, grandma are hardly following YouTube channels, but the people that is close to them do. So whoever is listening and has older parents or grandparents, is a silly, strange conversation to have to them, but just go to them and say, hey, if I suddenly call you with an emergency, asking you money urgently, please wait, hang up, call me directly and check.
Yeah.
This can save really people from losing money or getting worried for no reason, because sometimes it's not even the money, it's the anxiety that this older person have are living for hearing these terrible things on the phone. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it depends on the scam. Like, some scammers really, like the tech support and refund scams, where they threaten you with arrest and a bunch of other things that you've done. Those ones have like a sense of urgency really, really attached to it. But then there are like the other types of scams, like the romance scammers, who they take their time really, really developing a relationship with you over 4 or 5 months, because they have so many people on the go at the same time. So they literally take their time, and I think it's important for people to kind of understand that too. It's like, yes, there's a sense of urgency with some types of scams, but other scams, these scammers are socially engineering you to the point where they get you to fall for
But
a fake persona.
look, I entertain several of those myself, okay,
Mhm.
and doxed them, IP geolocated them, clearly know that they are the scammers, so there was no doubt. And they go ahead for months really without pushing you to do anything particular for them. Actually, they seem generous potentially. It's interesting. And even knowing those are scammers, when at the end I close the things because, I expose them, I say, hey, you're not what you say, you're here, etc., and they disappear. I feel like an empty part because this person really is dangerous mentally. Because what I'm trying to say, that even knowing they're a scam, you still get attached to this strange relationship that there is with a fake person, right? And can you imagine if you actually believe that the thing is actually true? Is this why people? There are the two aspects of shame and on one side, and disbelief, desire not to believe that this was not true, and they
Yeah.
keep people even when you tell them to fall more and more into it. So they're very, very bad. It's sad that there are no legislation and law that can actually do something to
Yeah.
protect victims.
Yeah, I agree. I had a scammer on the hook for 20 months. So yeah, he was a grant scammer based out of Nigeria, and he told me that I'd won, some money and whatever, or I needed to get a grant from the government, and I just had to pay a fee. For 20 months, I never paid the fee. I just kind of, something always kept coming up, something always kept happening, but I was able to get him to go on camera about 5 times with me, which was, uh, for me, it was like a really cool achievement, because normally if we get them to go on camera, it's the one time the scammer realizes that you're a scam baiter, or you're just pulling their leg. But with this guy, like, I kind of made him go on camera like quite often, and I could see that I had to basically act like they do. I had to create this, I had to keep him going, basically, right? So and reporting, even though I had his face, reporting him,
It's not crime.
they come back and say, yeah, he didn't steal any money. There's no crime there. And I always think of, people who rob a bank, right? And they fail. So they attempt to rob the bank. Well, you get arrested for attempted robbery,
Right.
right?
But in
That's
this
a
case,
crime.
yes.
How is this not a crime? I don't understand
Right.
it, but I mean, it is what it is. And we kind of have to work around what the law is, and
Yeah.
do our best to try to expose them as much as we can.
And waste their time as much as
Mhm.
possible. That there is a large
Yeah.
community. I saw you working with Trilogy Media, with many other, and
Mhm.
the call center. There is a lot of interesting cooperation. You had a particular experience that you particularly love in working with other scam baiters?
Yeah, I mean, just understanding that we all have different skill sets, and we all have different strengths, and I think a lot of us really do complement each other in the way that we can work together. And so, yeah, going to something like the People's Call Center was really cool to see, just because we all have, again, different um, styles and different approaches. And for me, I don't think one is better than the other. I just think we're all very different and unique, and we bring our own flavor to be able to show people how scams work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is not the kind of business that you're stealing client from another. It doesn't really. It's really a cooperative
You'd be
thing, right?
surprised. You'd be surprised.
Viewers move from one to another. But I saw so many cooperation between many, that there are some of the scambator that are more known as a guest of other scambator than in their own channel, right? So
Right.
is an interesting way also to support, because at the end of the day, it becomes so deep that it becomes a job. It's like a full-time job for many scambator that do
Right.
this some are making big money, some are making less, but it becomes something interesting. Then become a competition, who is more entertaining, who is more, while bringing. So it's like a dual face kind of things, right? It's a very interesting aspect. It's
Yeah.
for you something that consume a lot of energy. Is worth it? How you live it?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's hard for me, just my schedule. I mean, you see here with us trying to schedule this, it's really, it just depends on how my schedule is going in a particular day or a particular week. If I have a couple of like if I have like an hour, half an hour, or a couple of hours to be able to call scammers, then I take advantage of that situation as much as I possibly can, just because I know that um, doing so is hopefully preventing the scammer from talking to a real victim. And so I can't say that I look at it as a full-time job. I mean, I would love to do something like this and be creative, like 24/7 if possible. But having a family and having other obligations definitely plays into that whole situation, and making sure that I'm keeping my priorities straight as well, and not over um, overdoing or overthinking or being consumed by scam baiting 24/7 either.
Absolutely. There is more in life than just doing that, for sure. But what are the strategies that you put in place in your scam baiting work? What are the psychological maybe or even technical aspect strategies that you find that are the best one to use with scammers?
So I often try to. So I have a couple of different approaches when it comes to scam baiting that I use for myself. Again, I can't speak for everyone else. This is just kind of like in my situation or my view. But if I'm doing prank calls, meaning I'm calling the scammer constantly to really get under their skin, so it puts them in a state of being paranoid. Right? Is
All
the
right.
next call that we're gonna get, is that another prank? Is someone pranking us again? If I get them swearing, I don't know if you've ever had a situation where you talk to someone and they just say something that really gets under your skin and it really bothers you the rest of the day.
All right.
That's
Okay.
kind of what I think of when I do prank calling. Putting them in that situation putting them in the situation where they constantly think of, man, this is that guy, I hated that guy, like, just be in their mind kind of thing, right? So I think that approach can really work, the prank calling and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the other aspect where I think of trying to gather information, trying to get information like a bank account to report, or a phone number to report, or a remote access connection that they're using to report, or a website. When I think of those things, I think, okay, I always say, don't break kayfabe, which just is, I like wrestling, like professional wrestling. And so that's a term that is used in professional wrestling, which just means don't break character, right?
All
Breaking
right.
character means that they're going to catch on that, oh, this person was baiting me the whole time. Whereas if I don't break character, then they think it's a real victim and they want to keep talking to me. And so that's kind of how I approach it. I just think of, just don't break character unless, of course, I'm doing a prank call, or if I realize that it's not going to go anywhere else after this point, then I'll break character. And so, yeah, that's kind of like my approach to it. Just trying to get as much information as I possibly can.
Works. There is one other scambaiter, Chappie, that she works on the breaking characters from being the potential victim to start insulting them in a way that is
Right.
outrageous. That I think is the biggest, reason why people like to watch her video. Now, I can ask you one thing that is really curious and is quite unique to you. Where is the Deo name come from, if I may ask? What is the origin? Why you choose this name? What is your name? I don't know.
No, it's not. Yeah, it was just something that, like, I'm a big fan of a show. I don't know if you've heard of Beetlejuice. But there's a song called the Banana Boat Song, which is, it goes, Day-o, day-o,
Okay.
daylight come and me one go home. And so I was a fan of that song, and I realized that if I want to have something catchy, and so but I also didn't want to use the same lettering as that song, because then if someone were to try to look me up on YouTube, all they would find
Yeah,
is the
whatever.
Banana Boat Song.
Right.
So yeah, so I just changed one letter so that it just stuck out a little bit different.
Okay, I can unsee this now. Every time I see your name now, I have a musical in my mind. I
Yeah,
wonder
yeah.
how many other people we've been doing this thing. Okay, so is there a particular message that you want to share? Because consider our show is a little bit outside. It's on finance, in fintech, but this is financial crime is a very important aspect. So this
Oh, yeah.
goes to viewer that work in finance and then can help. Bring the message to people that can be potentially victim or themselves that can be useful. And what is your message to this, to our audience?
Perfect. Great question. So if someone works in like the financial industry, I would say, I think there needs to be more done in the banking industry, for example, to weed out whether someone is being scammed or not. I think there needs to be a way for people to be able to recover their money in case they are scammed. I always think of, when I think I don't have any money on me, but in Canada, our money says this note is legal tender, right? And that's when you have a physical bill that you hand over to someone, that's an exchange of money. But when you do things online, there's no physical money being exchanged. It's all digital. And so the way that I always look at it is, I think the financial companies who, have their clients who are losing money to scams, the financial companies can claim those as losses to them if they restore that money. So I don't know why they don't necessarily do that. Typically, banks are trying to find ways to reduce or pay the least amount of money to the government or whatever. So I don't know why that isn't in place. But I think if there could be a way set up for people in that industry to be able to ask questions, more probing questions, questions that would help a victim maybe feel more comfortable in disclosing that they in fact are being scammed, or if they don't know that they're being scammed, that somehow, some way, the questioning could lead to you finding out that they are being scammed. I think that's one thing that the financial industry, I think, could do a lot better. And then with regards to someone who is to prevent themselves from being scammed or is a victim of scams. Again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. Depending on the type of scam, don't. I find that there's two things that as humans that we kind of tend to respond to: curiosity and greed. And sometimes we get offered things like double your money with this crypto. And I mean, this is, for example, it's riddled all over YouTube with influencers who are like, "Hey, I'm coming out with like a coin," or ads on YouTube that are like a fake Elon Musk voiceover or something along those lines that lead to being scammed through crypto, for example. And so I guess what I would say is, do your due diligence before parting with your money. Like really investigate something. Don't feel like people have that FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? They just want to get in right away, and that's kind of where sometimes people's greed can kind of come in. Be more curious, do more research, find out more, research the individual that is offering the crypto stuff, right? Personally, I don't particularly like crypto, but I know that a lot of people think with different conspiracies and like, oh, the government can't control my money, blah, blah, blah. Let's go through crypto. So in that sense, like I understand where people are coming from, but at the same time, it's like you're taking a big risk because these people often are not licensed people. They're people who just see online. There's really nothing there to protect you. And so just do more research. Again, to stop, think, use your critical thinking skills before you part away with money. And that would be some advice that I would say I would give.
That's fantastic. And I hope that this is going to be just this interview save a few other potential victims from falling victim in a way, direct or indirect. Thank you again for being with us, and for everybody else, stay tuned. We're going to come back with more fantastic interview in ConQuest. Thank you again for being with us, Dayo. Till the next time.
Thanks, Roberto. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.